Everyone, we're just gonna get started in a few minutes. Yeah. 7:05. Is everybody's midterms going okay?
Lynn Alge.
Yes, how is your Linalge going? How is it going? I believe.
Yeah.
Tomorrow. I believe. Final.
Actually pretty easy. Like, well, not, I don't want to say easy, but like.
Never say it was easy.
Uh-huh.
Never say it was
What did
easy.
you think?
It was okay though. It was better than I thought it was gonna be. No.
Like a street map assignment like due today at 11:59. Yeah, like I need to finish it. Like 40%. I need to finish the remaining 60.
It's okay. If this workshop will be efficient, concise. That's the Yeah. I'm a GitHub master. Thank you. Okay, maybe we'll get started now at 7:05. Hello, many people who are watching this workshop. Okay. I have other people here too.
Yeah, hi everyone. Thanks for attending today's event. My name is Safwan.
Hi, my name is Hashim.
And I'm Trinity. And
And yeah, as I said earlier, thank you so much for visiting or attending this workshop. We hope that you'll get to learn more about GitHub and also GitHub Desktop.
Let's get into it.
So yeah, just to get started, we can give a quick overview of what GitHub is. I think I'm sure that like some of you have at least heard about it when working with like software projects or releasing your software projects. But to give a quick rundown, GitHub it's like a place where you can work on a software project with multiple people. It's commonly known as like a version control system. You can work on different projects with multiple people, and it's just a way to kind of upload what you've done locally on your computer and push it somewhere, push it online. And that's like a point where the project status currently is, and multiple people can either bring it to locally, make changes, push changes, all that stuff. GitHub is it's not the only version control system. There's like other alternatives like Bitbucket, GitLab, and it's just a great place to work on software collaboratively. So what we're going to be talking about is GitHub Desktop. Now, you might be wondering, what's the difference? Well, it's effectively GitHub, but it's on desktop. So normally when you're working with version control, you often have to type out a lot of commands on some command line interface or on other types of tools like Git Bash, your command prompt, Linux. But then GitHub Desktop, the way it works is that it's a more user-friendly way of doing version control. So there's a lot of different buttons, different like drop downs. It just streamlines that process of doing those version control commands without you having to explicitly type them. So the buttons are doing the work for you. All you're doing is pressing buttons and it's pushing software, pulling software, making changes, et cetera, et cetera. As I mentioned earlier, GitHub Desktop, it's a good tool because it's like compatible with different types of operating systems like Mac, Windows, Linux. It also works really fast in terminals. It's really user-friendly because there's a bunch of buttons which are just streamlining that version control process for you. And it's just easy to collaborate. If by chance you haven't made a GitHub account, we can quickly go on GitHub, make your account, username, pick an email, and then it just creates that GitHub account for you. Shouldn't be too long. If you have already made it, it's great. Now, also about installing GitHub Desktop, you can visit this link. It will just give you, you can install GitHub Desktop, or you can just quickly type install GitHub Desktop on your computer. Again, very quick process, and it's not too difficult. So I'll just quickly give a walkthrough of the GitHub on the website version. So I'll exit. So the way GitHub website looks like is on the web, the way it looks like is something like this, where you see a lot of different types of things. But for a personal account, let's say in this case, it's Trinity's account, you can see some things like repositories. You can access different projects, look through some of the projects they've done. What is it? Some of the files they've worked on. You can also see like their profile, in which it just gives an overall picture of what they've done. So what repositories they have, some achievements, how many followers they have, if they've received any stars. The coolest thing about GitHub is that you can see project progress of your progress on the different types of projects you've worked on. So it's like this square type of grid system where it's just showing how many pushes you've made to a repository, how many commits have you made, have you done any pull requests. This is a lot of jargon. If you've not heard, you'll be familiar with that as we progress in the workshop. But it's just a great graphical representation of what software projects you've worked on. And yeah, this is great to see. Now we're going to be going to actually creating a repository and some basic Git commands.
Okay, so we're going to go over creating a repository, or basically creating your first project on GitHub. So there are a couple ways to do this. You can start from scratch, like just a blank project, or you can clone an existing repository that's already on GitHub, whether this be your own, and that's called cloning, or you can copy somebody else's project, which is called forking. So I'll go over those. Okay, so once you open GitHub Desktop, hopefully you have this downloaded already. It's really simple. There is just some buttons, create a new repository on your hard drive. This is going to be like completely from scratch, or you can add an existing repository. So this is like if you have a project on your computer and you want to upload that project, or you can clone a repository. So if you want to create your own from scratch, it's just you put in your name, the description, and also where this repository is going to be on your computer. So it's going to be on GitHub, but there's also going to be a local version on your computer. And so you can choose the path of where that's going to be here. There's also like less important stuff, like you can create a README, which is basically like instructions for whoever is viewing your repository. And also git ignore, which ignores certain files if we don't want them on GitHub, or a license if you have that. But basically the most important stuff is the name, description, and where you're going to put it. Okay, and you can also clone things, as I mentioned before, which is when you take a repository, an already existing repository, and putting it on your computer. So as you can see, hopefully you can see these pictures here, but we're going to go over this in a demo. But basically, file, there's a clone repository button, and then you can click whichever repository you want to put onto your computer. Okay. And then like kind of another similar to cloning, you can fork a repository, which is basically taking somebody else's repository that you don't own, and you can actually make it your own. So GitHub's really good for like open source projects. Basically, it's really good for learning. So you can take someone else's repository and you can make your own changes to it without modifying theirs. Okay, so we're going to go over forking a repository in a demo. So if you want to go on this link, someone can put it in the chat. You can go to this link and we're going to fork it ourselves. Okay. So this is what a GitHub repository looks like. As you can see, it's kind of, it might be overwhelming, but all it is really is these are your files that are in your repository. So this is just from an old workshop, and we can actually take this and make it our own. So hopefully everybody's opened that, and I'm going to go onto GitHub Desktop. Okay, it's old. Okay, and mine looks different because I've already opened this before, so I'm just going to go to File. If you never opened GitHub Desktop before, there should just be a button that says Clone, and you can just click that. Yes. Oh, sorry, does anybody have any questions? By the way, I'll just wait for a second. If you have any questions, you can put it in the chat, like what cloning is or anything like that. Okay, I'm going to clone something, and if you have any questions, you can let me know. Okay, so file, and then clone repository. And now, see, I can select any of my own repositories, but I can also copy the URL here, and we can clone it from the URL. So I'm just going to copy the link. And then I'm going to go over to URL. And I can just copy the GitHub link here. And just like when I create my own repository from scratch, I can select where on my computer it's going to be. So this works fine for me. So I'm going to click clone. It's going to clone it. Okay, so I'll give everyone a couple seconds to follow along and let me know if you have any questions. Okay, I'm just gonna wait a minute. Okay. Is that good? Anybody need a couple seconds? Okay. Okay. So I'm going to show you now. It should be on our actual computer. So I'm just going to refresh. This is the path that we chose before. And if I click refresh, then the project is now on my computer and I can go into it and I can see all the files here. Okay. That good? Any questions? We're good? Okay. Okay. So now that we have the repository on our computer, we can actually make changes to it and then upload it to GitHub. Okay, so as I mentioned before, we have the local version of the repository on our computer, but if we want to change everybody else's code, then we'll actually have to do a few things. Okay, so we're going to go through them step by step. First, we add the changed files, and then we'll commit the change, which is basically like saving the change we made. And then we actually have to push the changes to GitHub, and that's when everybody can see it. Okay, so first adding the changed files. On GitHub desktop, it actually does this automatically. So if we change a file, I'll show you in a second. If you change a file, then it will just appear on the side here. This is also known as like staging or preparing for a commit. If you've heard those terms before, that's just something to know. But yeah, GitHub desktop automatically does this for us. So I'm going to make a change. So let's go over. Oh, sorry. GitHub desktop actually has a button here. I don't know if it makes it easier or not, but you can open the repository with Visual Studio Code if you have it. So you can click that button if you want. Okay, now let's just say I have shapes here. Okay, and I want to change these shapes. So let's find a new image. I'm going to look up shapes. And I like this one. Okay, so I'm going to just change this. So I'm going to save the image. And let's just say I'm going to delete shapes. And this is my new shapes. Sure, place it. Okay. Let's go open our repository here. Make sure it's changed. Looks good. Okay. And let's go to GitHub. Okay, and as you can see, it automatically detected that we changed the file. It's already all here. So we've successfully added our changed files. Okay. So the next step is to commit or save our changes. This does not, like I mentioned, does not upload it to the project. It's just to keep track of all the changes we made. So in case something goes wrong, we can revert back to it. So saving. Okay, so let's commit. So if I only changed one thing, so this message isn't going to really be long, but it's important that you keep track of all of the changes that you made and put it in the description here. Just like I said, in case something goes wrong, we want to keep track of all the changes we made. So I'm just going to say changed shapes maybe, and I'll say switched shapes.png. Okay. So since I don't own this repository, the OpenCV one, now is where I can say that I want to create a fork. So like, as I mentioned before, we're forking something. So I'm just going to click create a fork. I'm going to say fork this repository. I'll say that it's for my own purposes. I'm just going to make my own changes. Okay, sorry, I have to write the commit message again, but change shapes, switched shapes.png, and now I'm going to commit this change. Okay, and now our commit is saved. So we could just do a bunch more commits before we push, but that's the only changes we're gonna make. Okay, does anybody have any questions? Sorry, I'll put this back up. Anybody have any questions? So I'll give you another minute to make a change on your project. You can do whatever you want. And let me know if you have any questions. I'm gonna continue at like 7:21 or 22-ish, just so you know. Okay, does anyone need more time? I'm just gonna continue if there's no questions. Everybody okay? Okay, so the final step to this is actually uploading the commits to the project. So as I mentioned before, this doesn't actually let anybody see it. Actually, I'll show you on GitHub right now. Let's go on. I'm going to view my repository. So I'm going to go open here. And I can see my fork here. Okay, and as you can see, nothing's been changed. Let's open up shapes and it's still the old shapes, okay? So just because it's on our computer doesn't mean that it's on GitHub. So what I want to do is I'm going to push these changes. So I'm going to click push. Okay, and then it pushed. So let's go back and see on GitHub. Oops, sorry. Let me go back to the project. And now we can see shapes here. I don't know why it says 3 minutes ago, but shapes. Oh, because I committed 3 minutes ago. Oh, let me refresh. I'll wait a second. Okay, hopefully it's okay. Well, it says the commit here, so maybe we'll just trust that GitHub is okay. It's just okay. Well, you can see that the commit message is there, so we'll just trust that something's weird is going on. But yes. Okay, does everyone want to try pushing? I'll give you a minute for that, but you just click the push button. If you have any questions, let me know. Okay, GitHub's just being weird, but Hopefully that worked for you guys. Did it not work for anybody? Okay. Hopefully it worked and GitHub isn't weird for you. Okay, so that's it for making changes to your project. Now we're going to talk about, well, he'll show you.
Yeah, so one big part about software development is you're working with a bunch of people, right? It's not just you going all the time, you going full solo, and you're the only contributor to like a repository. So let's just give a quick example. I'll draw a quick diagram to explain how teams actually work on software projects. So let's say you have, if someone can't read what I'm writing on the board, just give a quick comment in the chat, okay? So let's say you have like a developer A and you have like a developer B. Imagine that this okay, so this is developer A, this is developer B, and this is like the repository that's on GitHub on the web. So normally the way it works is that both these developers, they will like clone their repositories so that it's on it locally. So now they have the version of the software of the project locally. Developer A has it locally, developer B has it locally. Let's say developer A, he makes a change to the repository by changing one line of code, adding a comment, whatever it is, he does those changes. So then he uses those that on GitHub desktop, he'd be doing git add, git commit, then git push. And then he pushes his changes to the repository on GitHub. Now, on GitHub, the repository is different to developer B. Developer B actually had the older version of the repository. He's not done it. He's just got the code and he's like, cool, I'm not going to do anything with it yet. So then to make sure that developer B has the latest code, developer B needs to get that code, the latest code that's been updated from the repository. And this command, the way it works, it's a combination of fetching and pulling. By doing these combinations, what it makes sure is that developer B gets the most up-to-date changes that's on GitHub to his repository. So then when he does fetching and pulling, which we'll go over, he now gets the latest version of the code and he can go forward. The reason why this is important is that if a developer doesn't get the most up-to-date changes and starts working with what he currently has locally versus what's on GitHub, it's going to lead to a problem called merge conflicts. We'll go over that a bit later in the presentation. But hopefully that gave an explanation of what's actually happening when two developers work on a project. One developer makes changes, pushes them, then the other developer needs to make sure that his local repository is up to date with what's currently on GitHub. And this concept is like about synchronizing project progress locally. You want to make sure that, give me 1 second. You want to make sure that your project progress is in sync with what's on GitHub versus what's on your local repository. So to actually, as I talked about this combination of fetching and pulling, to actually make sure that you actually get what's on GitHub to your local repository, you have to pull. You have to pull those changes and which ensures that what's on your computer, that repository is up to date with what's on GitHub. Now, remember how I talked about pulling and fetching? It's like a combination. So before you actually pull, a common practice in software development is actually fetching changes. And fetching changes, the way to best explain it is that it's like a notification system in which it lets you know whether or not your project that's locally is different to what's on GitHub. So it's kind of like it gives you a pop-up saying that, hey, these changes are different to what's currently on your computer. We got to sync them up. So to just clarify, fetching doesn't actually pull what's on GitHub locally. Fetching just lets you know that it's been different. And if it is different, then you actually pull the repository to your locally. Once you've done this combination of fetching and pulling, your local repository is not going to be synced with what's on GitHub. And then you can move forward and do whatever you need to. Then you push again, and that cycle goes again with the other developer. Let's actually give a quick demo of what this looks like. So let's say I'm on, imagine I'm a developer. Let's say on my computer, I'm gonna make changes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new file. Let's name this file README. It's a common file that's in like software projects. So I'm going to say, so think of me as like a developer. This is a README. Explanation, exclamation, explanation. Okay. Now the developer will be doing that process of adding, committing, and pushing. So they commit. And then so on GitHub, it's that README is now there. This is README. So that developer, let's say developer A, pushed his changes, and that's what's on GitHub right now. Now for developer B, so let's say me in this case, I'm gonna first check. So I'm like, now I'm on the repository, like locally, and I'm gonna check whether or not my code that's locally is different to what's currently on GitHub. So I'm gonna fetch, and then it tells me that, hey, what's on GitHub is different to what's on your computer right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull. Notice GitHub desktop, you just, instead of typing pull, you just have that button, pull. So now we're gonna see that on our local repository, we have the README now. Initially it wasn't there. And this is README. So now our project progress is synced with what's on GitHub, and then we can make our changes now, and then push them to GitHub. Does anyone have questions? If something didn't make sense, whether it's about fetching, pulling, or like the diagram I drew, let me know. Going once, going twice, going 3 times. Okay, we'll give like 2 to 3 minutes of you trying to do this process of pulling and fetching. So what's probably happening right now is that you're kind of on your own. Like it's like you're the only one on that repository. So like how I did it, just go on GitHub and then make whatever change you want, whether it's adding a file, removing a file, and then committing directly on the website. That will simulate another developer working on the project and up pushing changes to GitHub. And then whatever updated on GitHub, it will be different to what's done locally. So then that process of multiple people working on the project is simulated in that way. Yeah, just 2 to 3 minutes, try to do this process of fetching and pulling, try. For anyone that's trying pulling and fetching, how's it going? Any questions, comments, concerns? Okay, 30 more seconds and then we'll move forward to the next area. Okay, we're gonna now move on. So hopefully, the basic commands in Git, whether it's adding, committing, pushing, fetching, and pulling, make sense, or we got a good idea of it. Let's now move on to the next area.
All right. So these next few concepts that we're going to discuss are slightly more advanced, but they're very powerful, very useful, and you'll definitely be utilizing them as you progress throughout your software development journey. So yeah, the first thing we're going to talk about is Git branching. So the easiest way to kind of think about this is if you look at your entire project as a tree, creating a Git branch, well, that's just a branch of the tree. It has all the same attributes, all the same characteristics as the rest of the tree, but any changes to that branch don't affect the entire project unless you want it to. And when you're ready to, so if you're creating, let's say you want to implement a new feature, but you don't want to break your entire code, you want to test it out first, well, you could create a new branch, have your feature there. If it works, you can implement it into your project. And that's called merging branches. And so that's very easy to do. All you have to do is go in GitHub Desktop, you would press branch at the top and then merge into current branch. But if you're working with others, like we've already mentioned, you may want to be careful because you could potentially cause merge conflicts. And that's something we've alluded to before. We're going to talk about it in just a second, but that's something to keep in the back of your mind for now. So you can kind of see the general concept in this image here, but I'll go ahead and break it down on the chalkboard. So let me erase this. Wait, what? Oh, yeah. All right. So your main project is often called the main branch, or sometimes called the master branch, like in that picture. And that's really where you have all your code that works, that actually functions. That's your main project. So this would be your main branch. That's everything that works, everything that's the foundation of your project. Now, any changes you want to make, any branches that you create, those split off like this. You would make whatever changes you want, test them out, play around with them, make sure that you're happy with them. And when you're satisfied and you want to incorporate that into the main branch, you would merge. And you can do, you can create branches off of branches. You could, it's not just you, maybe you have some other people creating branches. But that's the general idea. So hopefully that makes sense. Does anyone have any questions about the idea of what branches are? Oh yeah, my bad. Right, if not, I guess we'll talk about how to actually create a branch. And so the way you do that in GitHub Desktop, GitHub Desktop, it's really simple. You have a nice GUI and buttons to press. So all you have to do is, actually, I'll go ahead and show you. So you open up GitHub Desktop and you can see which branch you're currently on. Just in this drop-down menu right here, you can see current branch, we're in the main branch. But let's say we want to create a new branch. So we would press the drop-down menu, click new branch, and then we can name it whatever we want. So in our case, we can call it test branch. All right, and then we would create the branch. And so now you can see that the branch we're on is our new test branch. And so any changes that we want to make to this branch now, we can do. So, I'll just keep it simple. I'll just add a text file. So let's open up Notepad. And, we'll say this is a test change to the test branch, right? This could be, again, any change you want to make. So we'll go ahead and save this. All right, and then when we go to GitHub desktop, there it is. You can see that it is now in the program. You can see the file itself and of course the changes that you made. So, all right, at this point, let's say, we're satisfied with this change. We want to go ahead and merge it with with the rest of our project. And so there's really two ways to do this. I'll show you the better way first, and then I'll show you kind of the easier way. So at this point, first, before we do anything, we'll have to commit this change. And at this point, we'll have a simple comment. And really, ideally, when you're making these comments to your commits, you want to be as descriptive as possible because you want to allow everyone else you're working with to know exactly what this change, exactly what this commit is doing. Here, we're doing something pretty simple. We're just adding a text file. So, there's only so much detail I can go into. So we'll say, yeah, just added text file. Okay, we'll go ahead and commit to the test branch. All right, now it's committed, it's on our local machine, and we'll go ahead and publish it to GitHub. All right, and now if we go to the actual website, you can see that here we go, test branch had recent pushes less than a minute ago. And we'll go ahead and see that, yeah, the test branch is now there. And if we go in, there it is, test change.txt, and that's the change we made. All right, so I guess, yeah, let's say we're happy with that change now, and we now want to merge it with the rest of our project. How do we do that? Well, we'll go ahead and create a pull request. And again, this is the best way to go about merging your branches. So I want to create a new pull request. And you want to make sure that you're on the right repository. So in our case, that's this one. Oh, and let me know if I'm going too fast, by the way. If you want me to slow down or go back, I'm more than happy to do that. Okay, so now we are here. Wait. Fair pull request. Okay. Okay, there we go. And then, yep, we are able to merge. So yeah, we'll go ahead and create the pull request. And here we go. So at this point, it'll tell you there are no conflicts. We'll talk about what happens if there are. But yeah, at this point, we are good to go. So if we go back to, actually, we'll show it on the website. If we go back to our repository and we go to the main branch, we can now see that, we can now see that merge pull request. Yeah, okay. So yeah, we have to confirm that first. Okay, and now at this point, you can see that it is in the main branch. And there it is, text.txt, we're in the main branch, and we're good to go. All right. And again, if you want to move between branches, we kind of showed it before, but it's really simple. You would just go down, on the drop-down menu, and then switch between branches like so. We're on test branch now, we can go to main. Yeah, pretty straightforward. Now, if you're on git bash, you would use the checkout command, but that if you want to look into that, that's something you can go into. Right now, we'll focus on GitHub desktop. All right, so now we'll finally talk about merge conflicts. So essentially, these occur when Git isn't able to automatically merge several independent edits to a file. And so they're labeled in your files, and a lot of text editors actually support highlighting them so they're easy to kind of catch and deal with. So here's an example of a merge conflict where you have, it's highlighted here in your text editor. And then in GitHub desktop, it indicates that, yeah, we have conflicts. This is where they are. And then if you want to open them in Sublime Text to fix them, you can do that. So now how do you actually deal with merge conflicts when they come up? Really, it depends on the nature of the conflict. It depends on kind of the changes you made and how you want to move forward. But just a few general guidelines to resolve them on GitHub desktop. Really just look at both versions of the conflict and think about, why are they different and which one do you actually want to use and move forward with in your project. And then once you figure that out, all you need to do is get rid of the incorrect, the incorrect version and then merge again. And hopefully at that point, the conflict will be resolved. So in this case, you can see in this example, you have two import statements that are conflicting. And yeah, so once you figure out the one you want, which is this one, import java.util.scanner, you get rid of the other one, merge again, and the conflict is resolved. So does anyone have any questions about merge conflicts or merging branches, or yeah, anything about whatever we've discussed so far? I'll give you a couple seconds. And I guess if you want to go ahead and try creating a branch, creating a change, and then potentially merging that branch, I'll let you do that. So I guess we'll come back at 7:49. 3 minutes should be enough time. And yeah, in the meantime, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. I'm more than happy to answer. Oh, and actually, I might as well show you like a more convenient way to merge branches. So if you actually go to GitHub desktop, you can do this in 2 steps. You saw the process for the actual website was, pretty, a little longer. That's the way you should do it. But, if you're just doing this, if you're the only one in your repository and this is, it's not as significant, what you can do is on GitHub desktop, go to the branch that you want to merge to. So let's say you want to merge to the main branch. You would go to the main branch, right click on it. You would go to the main branch, press branch, and then merge into current branch. And then you can pick which branch you want to merge. But yeah, we already did it, so I'm not going to do it again. But again, you would just do that. And then it would go ahead and show you if you have any merge conflicts and the whole thing. But yeah, that's an easier way to do it. So yeah, we'll come back at let's say 7:50, and yeah, we'll continue from there. All right, yeah, so hopefully you had a bit of a chance to kind of do that. We'll go ahead and continue. So the next thing, and I think the last thing we're going to talk about is git revert. So this is essentially a feature that allows you to revert your changes. And it's similar to using like Control-Z to undo a change, but instead of removing the commit from the entire project's history, it actually inverts the change that was caused by the commit. So what it does is it appends a new commit with content that basically, inverses the commit that you wanted to get rid of. And so the reason that this is actually better than just, an undo is that Git preserves the history. So you still have access to all the revision history. You can see the changes that were made, why they were made, and that, facilitates kind of reliable collaboration. And so I guess here's an example for those of us with a linear algebra midterm tomorrow. If you had, if you just did Control-Z, let's say you had a matrix A, using Control-Z would just be like A minus A, which would give you 0, right? But if you instead used git revert, that's like multiplying by A inverse. And this would give you I. And so this way we don't get rid of everything, it's still preserved, but you undid your change. If that means nothing to you, don't worry about it. But hopefully we got in some test review for tomorrow as well. Okay, so yeah, and I guess another bonus use of git revert is that, if you have a bug, you don't have to go in, try to find it. GitHub will automatically find it and fix it for you. So any questions about git revert, again, feel free to leave them in the chat. But yeah, we'll go ahead and move on.
Okay, so GitHub Student Developer Pack is just a bunch of perks you can get if you sign up with your McMaster email, or you can attach your McMaster email to your GitHub account and you just get a bunch of free stuff like the stuff here, or there's like a whole bunch of things. So you can just go to the site or look up GitHub Education Pack, and it'll just here, click here, and you get all this free stuff. So yeah, they just need to approve you. So I think you add your McMaster email to your GitHub account and then you can get it. Yeah. Does anybody have any questions about anything? Okay. Nobody has any questions. Thanks for coming if you guys yeah, thanks for coming, even though you might have your midterms or anything. Yeah.
Hope you guys learned something new. And yeah.
Yeah, as she mentioned, hopefully you learn more about Git desktop, version control, some of the basic commands like adding, committing, pushing, pulling, fetching, and branching. Yeah.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.